Hi everyone, I'm Dan Limbach, producer of the PharmaVOICE webcast network, and I'll be your facilitator for this session. Welcome to the Leading Global Teams Executive Panel. Let's get on with the program and meet our panelists. Adelaide Goldberg, a 2020 PharmaVOICE 100, is EY's Global Life Sciences digital, social, and commercial innovation leader, with a focus on developing the necessary digital infrastructure to support emerging next-generation forms of individualized therapies to tackle cancer and rare diseases. With more than 28 years of professional experience in media, communications, and consulting to his credit, Adlai helped establish EY Global Social Media Services and Analytics Hub, as well as Panelists, a digital ecosphere that expedites the timely flow of information and materials along the value chain, helping patients receive the care they need. Guadalupe Hayes-Mota, a 2020 PharmaVOICE 100, is Director, Global Supply Chain and Manufacturing at Ultragenyx Pharmaceuticals, a clinical-stage biopharmaceutical company committed to bringing to market novel products for the treatment of rare and ultra-rare diseases. He leads the worldwide packaging, labeling, and distribution of the company's gene therapy, medicines, and supplies. Previously, he held the global production and distribution of medicines to 93 countries at Biogen and GSK. Susannah Monksted is Chief Precision Officer of Diaceutics, a data analytics and end-to-end services provider enabled by DXRX. She brings a wealth of experience to her role leading a global commercial team to improve the testing ecosystem to help patients capitalize on the new breakthrough medications. Susannah has a broad commercial work experience from both pharma and diagnostic companies and provides insights and builds strategies for unique personalized medicine projects. In past roles, Susannah was leading teams focused on commercialization of CDX in alignment with RX launch and life cycle across global territories, and she has led a number of global launches of companion diagnostic products. Rebecca Vermeulen, a 2020 PharmaVOICE 100, is VP, Patient and Society Strategy, Product Development, and Head Customer Strategy, Patient Partnership and Health Equity Global Medical Affairs at Roche, a global pioneer in pharmaceuticals and diagnostics focused on advancing science to improve people's lives. She champions efforts to give patients the information they need and bring insight into the research and development of new treatments as a valued, trusted partner in the process. Before joining Roche as head of global medical liaisons and communications, she spent nearly 8 years at Genentech in increasingly senior roles. Rebecca also serves as chair, Global Board of Directors for the Healthcare Businesswomen's Association. She has also served as chair, Global Board of Directors for the Drug Information Association. Taren Grom will be your moderator. Take it away, Taren.
Hi, I'm Taren Grom, editor of PharmaVOICE magazine, and welcome to the Leading Global Teams panel. We have an outstanding lineup, and I can't wait to get started. So, Rebecca, we all know that leading global teams requires special skills and capabilities, which is more important than ever as life sciences companies navigate a new world. Rebecca, we're going to kick off with you. What are some of the keys to leading a global team?
I think the first word that comes to my mind, Taren, is collaboration. The essence of coming to the table with the true spirit of partnership. All too often, right, for many of us who work in global countries who have or work in global roles where it's so important that we build models, that we enable affiliates in the countries that we're working with, you always get this dynamic of global versus the countries. And in many instances, global can be seen as the enemy. What are they doing? Why don't they just, let us do what we need to do? They don't understand our country. They may not understand our situation. And so I think it's really important as we build teams and we look at our global models that we come to the table with a spirit of mutual collaboration, that we really listen and we identify the opportunities where we can work together, where we can make the biggest difference. Our job in global is to think strategically about the future and where we need to evolve. And we do that certainly by getting input from those around us and making sure that we're very grounded as we're thinking through the approach that will best support that strategy. And so I think, coming to the table with that spirit of collaboration and partnership and a true willingness to really listen and engage is key because we have to be able to get that input so that we understand the trends, we understand what's happening in the world around us. So when we set a strategic frame, that it's going to be most meaningful and impactful. So I'm curious, what my other panelists may think about that as well, but that's certainly the experience that I would have to share.
That's excellent. Adlai, why don't you jump in?
I'd like to build on what Rebecca said. I fully agree. That whole idea of teamwork and collaboration is important. I would actually take it up even one level higher, which is actually thinking about actually building one team. And so all of a sudden, it's yes, we're collaborating and yes, we're working together, but all of a sudden, actually fostering a sense of actual one team and being one unit has really helped me to really drive the connectivity and connectedness that Rebecca was referring to. And so I would even put a capstone around it in terms of one team. The second piece, though, is sensitivity. There's so much difference and diversity in the world. It's language, it's culture, it's style, it's religion, it's sexual preference. It's a lot of different things. And as you're bringing together global teams, there's a really important need or foundational need for sensitivity that everybody comes to the table with. And it's the differences that everybody's going to be bumping into that can be handled in one of two ways, right? Conflict and strife, or hey, this is something that we really can embrace and leverage as a team to make us better as a team because of that difference in diversity. And so I'm building on where Rebecca was going. Those would be my two builds, and have found those to be super important. Kind of the one teamness, and then just the sensitivity and openness to that diversity that really brings it together, has brought it together for me in my career.
I think it's a great add, and I think as we look at where we are in the world today, that sensitivity to equality and equity and differentiation is so more important, and the collaboration. So Guadalupe, I'd love to tap into you and get your perspective on this.
I think it was great about the one team. Also, I believe that there is a sense that we have to create a one purpose kind of team. Purpose is a really important thing when I lead global teams, because you want to be able to connect everyone to rally against one goal and to make sure they're all connected, right? And that transcends all those countries, right, in those different regions. And for me specifically, the work that I do along the biotech, that purpose is to get the medicine to the patient and create that. So we all rally around manufacturing and the operations to make sure that's what we're achieving, right? And that connects a lot of people together. And it's just that purpose itself brings one culture and one cohesiveness that really helps together. It also kind of helps create a trust within the teams, which is quite important when you're trying to lead a team, right? That are located in different parts. This trust that they care about each other, and that can be done with that purpose in mind.
Love that. Susanna?
Yeah, so I'll try to build on that as well. So many good things been said already, but if I continue down the path of the one team, completely agree there. And I think in the global setup that most of us work in today, I think it's so important that out of sight is not out of mind, that you have that in your thinking. And we work in a virtual setup, but I like to think of us as a distributed workforce and not remote working, so that you always have that in mind, that how do I include teams that are not in the room so they don't feel that they're hanging there on a phone line. But also back to Rebecca, what you said about collaboration. I think an aspect of that is really to be respectful about other cultures and other intentions. It's so easy to come into a conversation with your own background, your own view, your own intentions, and then apply that to everyone else, and by that giving them intentions that they don't have, and there is where some misunderstandings can very often happen. So being that open-minded, really being interested in what people have to say and what they have to contribute to is just really key for me.
Yeah, I love that distributed workforce rather than being a virtual workforce. We're a virtual company, and I think of us the same way, that we distribute our work. around the globe, actually. So, I love also the one purpose. And I think that really is what the connection is, that we're all working in the same, we're all trying to pull the oars in the same direction at the same time, no matter where we are around the world, right? And that goes back to collaboration and building those teams with sensitivity to make sure that everybody feels included. So those are some great points. Final thoughts on this subject before we go to question 2?
I think in essence, just listening from the conversation, it all boils down to inclusiveness and that kind of enterprise mindset, right? Truly to be able to see the big picture. And we say that at our company as well, right? That kind of one company, one perspective.
One purpose.
Yeah,
The Guadalupe piece was one purpose. Is exactly right.
I love that as well. But at the same time, and this is all great stuff, that there are challenges to managing a global workforce. So I'd love to hear what some of those challenges are that you have encountered that might pave the way for some of your peers, that how you've overcome some of those challenges. Susannah, what have you encountered that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I think, and some of it really boils down to simple things as, communication and, misunderstandings in written communication. I think is something that we often see. We all have seen these emails, threads, or chats that go boom, 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 forth and back. And sometimes as an outsider, you can actually see how they're just missing each other, and that can be language barriers. That can, again, I'm not native English, so I can appreciate how that can be challenging, and just having that in mind and having an intention in mind that people actually want to do the right thing is important to carry with you, and that can solve a lot of conflicts. But then I think there are practical aspects as well as we get more and more global. We don't operate a 9 to 5. I don't think that's a reality anymore. And trying to get people from the East Coast, the West Coast, Japan, Europe together on a call can be a real challenge. And we all need to be flexible in that. We all need to have that one team and an attitude of wanting to do it together and be flexible in some areas. Then our colleagues will be in other areas. And another point just that I think is really key is, like, now we are on video. I've come to appreciate that. I didn't really enjoy it so much in the beginning, to be honest. But having an opportunity to read people's facial expressions, to understand, to see the body language, to actually just connect a little bit more when you see people, that just means so much and contributes to a better communication and better understanding.
Yeah, I agree. I think it provides a level of intimacy that we never had before in terms of our teams and communicating. So, Guadalupe, what have been some of your experiences?
I think one of the biggest obstacles that I kind of face is really creating, I think I mentioned earlier, trust. Because that's a really important part about when you work in a global team, you have people around the world is just trusting each other and making sure each other kind of support each other. Now, that's been difficult to do, but I think there's certain ways that I kind of structure to make sure those occur. One of them is just making sure we create a routine scheduled meeting that people come together and really see each other and talk. And part of that meeting will also be unstructured part of the meeting where people can get to know them more personally. And that creates more of a bond internally within themselves. And then having more of the structured business component, right? And I think that dialogue allows people to start seeing each other and really start seeing the more personal self, versus sometimes it can become transactional because you're so far away, you just have a chat. But you want to make sure that people connect in a more intimate way, because trust is mostly built by people being connected together in a space. But since everyone's all different parts of the world, just creating that space to allow people to have those conversations really takes it that step to be bonded, and people really start bonding together.
And when you create that space, do your teams react positively to that? I mean, because we are working virtually now and it's a little bit different than it had been before. So, and they're all receptive to this.
Yes, I think it's very open. I leave it open to who can participate, who doesn't want to participate in those things, but mostly all of them want to, because they want to keep, the momentum of getting to know each other, and also just to know what other people are doing around the world, so they can just understand where they're coming from. And people really enjoy having that personal connection versus just having the disconnect that happens when you just send emails, or you might just have like a very business meeting.
Right, as Susannah was saying about that facial recognition and some of that body language that really comes through too. Adlai, what are you finding in terms of your
there's a couple. I want to go to the light side and to the heavy side. So on the light side, the one that we constantly bump into is, and it kind of translates itself into misunderstanding, but it's just vocabulary. Everybody uses words in very different ways, and then you start adding the complication of, as Susanne was saying, in terms of second or even third languages for some folks. All of a sudden, how one person might use a word or interpret another word really could really turn into a bit of a maelstrom in terms of how it ultimately gets spun out. And so one of the things that I just laugh at and enjoy, and then how we kind of work through it, is just to take a step back and appreciate the richness of language and how people actually are using different sorts of words and trying to interpret it or use it in meaning different ways, and kind of overcoming that in a really light way. It's just bringing people together to really have a good belly laugh about how it actually did get spun out and what it could possibly mean. And you can often find other examples outside of the conversation around how words might be used in other cultures or in other languages, and then all of a sudden it becomes a really great belly laugh for all of us to kind of overcome. So that's kind of on the light side. On the more serious side, what is often more difficult to overcome is, we all come forward with cultural identities and cultural beliefs, and sometimes we are aware of those, and in many cases, sometimes you're not, right? And I've lived in Indonesia, and I've lived in Russia, and I've lived in Switzerland, and I've lived in Japan, and all these different places. And if you start to think about just the diversity of how people and what people believe in and hold really dear to their hearts, you bump into things where it's really cutting across one's personal deep set of beliefs that they've actually grown up with. And in those circumstances, it takes a lot more to really bring people together and really drive down towards the understanding level. And I really liked in Guadalupe's answer just in the last section around the purpose. One of the easiest ways to kind of get yourselves grounded back into kind of why we're here and the respect of how people may be coming to the situation is really through the purpose and why we're there. And if it's about getting medicines to patients or curing cancer or whatever it is, that purpose has really been the place where I've always gone to ground to really help to overcome some of the challenges that genuinely exist when you have diverse cross-cultural teams happening and living all over the world. Absolutely.
And that shared purpose has that shared vocabulary too.
That's right.
So that you are able to then communicate along that vernacular. And I always say words matter. So I'm right there with you on that light part of it, because words do matter and they are very important. Rebecca, round us out. So I know you've led a lot of different global teams in different organizations, some on your professional and some on your volunteer world. So share some of your experiences.
Yeah, I just have to echo the comments that have been really made around sensitivity and words matter, and just, being thoughtful and being able to laugh right when those instances occur that you can kind of elevate and recognize or bring it up. But most importantly, I think it's the humbleness that we bring to the table, right? When situations do occur, right? And you need to really step back and better understand a perspective, or something has, rubbed against a cultural norm that may exist, that willingness to step in and don't assume right? So there is, I think, a level of vulnerability for all of us as leaders where, you have to come into a space and really be open as yourself so people can understand your intent. and your purpose, so that when the words or the body language or the moments of that like happen, they know who you are as a person. And so I just really, bring that perspective of leading global teams also requires us as leaders to allow that vulnerability to come. And that isn't always easy, but we have to be our most authentic and genuine selves, so people understand who we are. And they know that, they can really sense and feel how caring and committed we are. So that would be the perspective I've had, because I've had many of those instances that we've referred to today. And, all you can do in those situations is just allow yourself to open up, acknowledge, or bring people together and, ask the questions and a genuine interest to want to explore and know more, because our teams are so diverse, right? It's just the reality of our worlds.
Absolutely. And I'll ask this question for all of you. Are you finding that in this virtual world that we now are in, that your teams are connecting more because of the virtuality? And are they more accepting of some of these differences? Because now it's becoming a little bit more intimate. Now we're in some people's homes. We are in different places. And so how is that resonating with your folks? And then we'll end it out with at the end with the more pandemic issue. But I'm just curious about that right now. So jump in.
I'll jump in for a second. I personally love being in people's homes, and that sounds a bit creepy, spooky. But the reality is, I would say that is equally true for everyone on the teams that I've actually that I work with around the world. We now know their kids. We now know their dogs and their cats, their moms and their dads. We can see their environment around them and understand some of their hobbies and their interests. And we've taken it one step further, which has also started to include spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes showing us something that's really important to you and kind of what's going on in your life. And it could be cooking or it's painting. Somebody on my team, I just realized, builds these massive Lego sets, 45-year-old computer programmer, and she's just totally passionate about these Lego sets. And all of a sudden now we have this much more personal experience of everybody that I'm working with that never would have happened had we not actually arrived in this virtual world right now. And so I know people's kids' names, and I know their birthdays, and I know their favorite food and their dogs and all this stuff. And all of a sudden we have this very much more personal, deeper relationship because of that.
I love that.
And I think if I can add in there, I think, I went 2 years ago, I was mainly sitting in an office, typical going into your office every day. And then I went to this virtual environment, and I've been really surprised how I now know my colleagues broadly much, much better than I did in the office setting. And, reflecting back on the time here, it's not that strange really, because here you make an effort, because you don't see people every day, you don't meet someone every day. You actually do make an effort to try to connect with people. And the difference is that where you're in the office, you might connect with the same 5-10 people outside the meetings that you were going to. Here, you broadcast your life to the whole company. You put a chat out there showing your new dog, your kids are back to school, the crazy Lego set that you were building, whatever it might be. So you get to know every little corner of the organization in a different way, and not just the same 5 you came to chat with.
Yep, that's great.
True.
Great. So, we're going to move on to our next section, which is about the importance of global experience in somebody's career progression. I know, Adlai, you have some comments about that. So talk to me about what you have found. And by the way, I have passport envy, just to let you know.
Well, I'll have my passport talk to your passport. We'll get over that one. I remember when I was graduating, and this is a very, very long time ago, and one of my college professors had said, the world will be massively different than what we now understand this today. And this is back in the 80s. And he said, there's going to be a couple things that are really important. One is go learn more languages, and go and really experience the world, because it's going to be vastly important to you in your life sometime down the road. Immediately after graduating from my MBA program, I left the United States. This was back in 1990. And I spent over 30 years on the road, just living and working in 7 different countries, some with EY and other on my own. And there were 2 pieces to that I now reflect on kind of 30 odd years later in my career that were really important. And it goes back to what Rebecca was saying just a few minutes earlier, which was this really allowed me to develop a much greater level of sensitivity, openness, and curiosity that I think about where I am in my career and what I'm able to do today, that I didn't realize those were the skills, those were the business and life skills that I was learning because I was on the road. And so I think kind of having that global experience is you get your business skills, but there's a much deeper, richer, personal set of skills and capabilities that you develop around understanding and learning and being sensitive and curious and open to the world and cultures and foods and everything else that's going on, that really becomes absolutely institutional or foundational for career success, particularly in a global organization. So global experience, how important is it? I tell anybody I'm speaking to as they're going through junior high, high school, college and whatnot, go out, see the world. There's so much that you're just, I can't tell you what you're going to pick up, but whatever you pick up, you'll find it's going to be useful in your life. And that's been my experience.
That's awesome. 7 different countries. So how many different languages do you speak?
I speak 3, Japanese, Thai, and Indonesian, Bahasa.
Wow. Well, I speak 1, so that's not good. But I am fluent, so as I've been told. Rebecca, tell me, I know that you have some clear thoughts about the importance of global experience too in your career progression as well as how you mentor others.
Yeah, I think, the experience that you have when you are able to go and be in other places of the world, it does open your eyes to the reality, right? The saying is true. There's no better way to understand than walking in another man's shoes. And it's so important, for us to have those experiences so that we don't make those false assumptions, right? We all have our own kind of unconscious thinking that happens, right? And it's natural for us to want to make assumptions about how things must be or what must be going on in certain areas. And I think just having that global experience opens your eyes in so many ways and tears down even silos within the company because you've related, you've built relationships, you can connect and understand. And so then when you are building teams, you're looking for, that richness. You want that diversity that we were speaking about before. You appreciate the differences of views and perspectives that come to the table. And that's so valuable, right? And so I just think, the ability as, we lead others to understand that and to bring that into our teams and into the spirit of how we work together and relate. In giving a lot of time to outside organizations, I appreciate in particular, I give time with the Healthcare Business Women's Association, and I invest a lot of time understanding the cultural differences that women experience in different countries because it's a passion of mine. Right, it's that perspective and just being able to understand and relate to different experiences because experiences are what experiences are. It helps us as leaders be better allies so that we, can represent the needs of others and bring that perspective, to the table as well.
Well said. Thank you so much. Yes, I do know how much time you devote to the HBA, and it is amazing. And you are a global leader of global leaders, so that is a distinction in and of itself. So, Susannah, tell us about your global experience in terms of how it's helped your career progression. And since you are now in Denmark, you're global.
I'm the non-US here, but it's interesting, and I was just reflecting on what was said, and I can only really agree. And I thought I would share. I got inspired to maybe share some experience on that from a personal experience early in my career. So when I graduated, started a job, I had all these desires to go abroad, and I was thinking, US or Canada or something very exotic, and I ended up in Norway, which is a little tiny hop from Denmark. We actually almost understand each other's languages. So moving there, I felt like it was not really moving abroad because it felt so close. But what I learned from that was that even if it's that close, you can drive there in 6-7 hours. We can fairly well understand each other's languages. We have this Scandinavian culture together, but I still found that the culture was so different, that what I took for granted, I thought that we were all the same, that we had the same background, and then landing there, I realized that we do see the world in very different ways. The culture was very different, and that caught me by surprise, but it also made me a little bit humble from going forward, understanding don't take things for granted just because some will look different, and you'll assume that by that they are different, and realizing that you can actually sometimes be much closer connected with someone from the other side of the world than your next door neighbor. So I think that just opened my eyes very early on to being respectful of that cultural difference and what global experience can do for you. And I will say right now, I think many of us have realized that as we might sometimes have a little bit a thought of traveling can be too much. We've been a lot on the road, a lot of hours spent on planes. I will for one say that I truly miss it. And, I can't wait to get back out there. So I've learned that it's really a love-hate relationship.
I'm with you. It is a love-hate relationship. I get it. And I think that's great. I think that's one of the themes that we're hearing through this, is that it's humbling, and we need to be respectful, and we have to be really open to other people's experiences. So those are great points. Guadalupe, take us home. So how has global experience helped you in your career?
I think one of the most important things that global experience has helped me is that it has built specific skill sets that I don't think I would build otherwise. One of them is understanding how to be flexible. And when you put in situations that you're trying to learn how things work and suddenly you have to make decisions rather fast, you become very flexible and agile for those things. And I think Rebecca mentioned this earlier, is like understanding like empathy. I think you start to understand how to be more empathetic and understand other people. And that I learned a lot of that through different countries that I work, and how to really work with different individuals and really come together with their cultures and figure out how to move forward. So I think it's just that ability to connect to humanity in that way, and be able to just connect and be able to understand people's life and kind of move that forward is really important. But it's just like the ability to just be very flexible and just be able to make decisions as you come to those places. I think that's the most rewarding part about it. And also just learning the culture of other individuals. I think it's just amazing, right? To see how other people live, what other people do, and seeing those differences. And you come to a conclusion also to realize that at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all kind of interact in the same way. And that's something very reassuring that I think through growing globally more that I travel, the more that I go to different countries, is the more I see that humanity is pretty much the same in so many ways. And that's very humbling to just acknowledge that.
Well, that's good. I think that we have to have greater respect for that human aspect of all that we do right now, especially in these troubling times. Earlier we talked about, Adlai was talking about the fun thing about the Legos, but on a more serious note, in terms of the pandemic, it has had to impact your teams. And so operationally, how has that changed what you do? And then we can go back to the lighter side, because I think that is a piece of this too. So Guadalupe, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah, for us, it has impacted. I mean, I manage global supply chains and manufacturing. So that has really transformed a lot the ways that we do our operations. So operations have completely rechanged because now we're thinking about how do we actually deal with the COVID within the manufacturers and make sure we keep our employees safe, right? And so that's really important that we keep in the back of our minds and how operations have completely changed. So we have to be more robust. And also just country from country, those things changes. So the status of COVID is very different from country to country, and some manufacturers might have differences. So we have to make sure we accommodate that. And the second thing is we became more supportive of our employees, right? In regards to really kind of helping them to really be the best they can be. An example is like in the United States, some people who are working virtually at home that might have to take care of their children and those opportunities. So we have to be able to kind of help them and give them the support to be successful and be more flexible with them so they can actually take care of their family, take care of their personal life, but at the same time kind of help us manufacture and produce these products as it goes by. So I think one of those biggest changes has been the operations, but also just bringing that support to individuals to make sure they're taken care of during this very difficult time.
Adlai, I see you shaking your head, so why don't we turn to you? And
I'm going to build on the support that Guadalupe was sharing. I remember the first person on our team who had a direct relative who was diagnosed, an elderly relative who was diagnosed and then later passed on because of COVID. And this is back in kind of March timeframe. And it brought home the support question to an entirely new level around how do you start to create an environment where we as a team who are now virtual and there's no physicality possible. And here was a person who had lost, a parent and wasn't even able to kind of be with the parent. And so the idea of really getting intimate and providing that person with the care that we as a business could be providing to that individual outside of that person's family network. And so that early experience in the middle of the pandemic brought a level of humanity to our entire team that was really, I would say, transformational. It now went way it was purpose plus right. Because all of a sudden now this became real, and we needed to understand how to accommodate and support and listen and learn and be with somebody who went through quite a long grieving process because wasn't even able to have a funeral. So the impact of the pandemic, I think at a very, very personal level, kind of got us connected, unfortunately, around an event as such.
Agreed.
But has really brought us together in a way that I would never ever see again in my life.
So really, we're looking for some silver linings here out of such a global tragedy, right? And Susanne, you and I have talked before, and your experience in Denmark is far different than our experience has been here in the U.S. So what has this meant for your teams in terms of dealing with the pandemic?
Yeah, but I think I'll just add on what was just said, because I think it's been extraordinary times for everyone, and both internally with colleagues, but also externally with clients. It's we've all been aware, we've all kind of gathered around this situation, and it's been you couldn't really get on a call without just touching upon how are people doing, what's the situation now, are you able to go outside, do you need to stay indoor? So it's been an overarching theme throughout, and I concur on the it's been a time of support, and we've seen both from a company perspective, we've had to go in and offer flexible solutions and be supportive. We've offered, some psychological support to people that need it. And so there are aspects there, but even just teams coming together, helping colleagues in smaller and bigger things, again, just have someone to talk to, someone to rant to if you need that. But But also on the lighter side, we had a group that gathered together to help each other on indoor fitness programs, people that love to go to the gym, they were not allowed outside, they were sharing videos on how to do exercises, which was just supported in a different way that we have seen before.
Right.
And on an external perspective, you suddenly see your clients in pajamas in the middle of the day, and you're kind of like, okay, and you see that they have a cat or their kids are running around. So it's just been a connecting factor in both a very serious note, but also on a lighter note. And I agree with you. I mean, I will probably say that I hope I won't experience the same again, but it has been quite extraordinary.
I think those are great points. It has been extraordinary. And again, I think we're all looking for some of those silver linings amongst the tragedies, because it has become so, as you said, overarching, and we don't have a conversation without talking about how it's affecting you personally, professionally, psychologically, etc. So I think that there is a lot of this to unwrap. And I think it's going to take a lot of care from leaders such as yourselves to make sure that your teams are supported, that they feel well nourished in a mindset kind of way and in a thoughtful kind of way. And that remember that we're all human too at the same time. So even though you are Chief Precision Officer, we can't all be so precise. So I get that. Rebecca, take us home. So, how has that affected you, the pandemic, in terms of your teams that you're leading?
Yeah, I'd like to share two perspectives, to the team perspective that I have the opportunity to work with, and then externally to the work that we do, supporting patients and healthcare professionals. Certainly within the team aspect, that spirit of connection has been a really, I think, the silver lining, because it's brought people who aren't necessarily on the same teams but are in similar places together, because it's all about a support network. And how can we provide that to each other, to understand those that may be living alone versus those that have families. Everybody has different needs. And so just to be able to come into that space together is been really good. And, my teams, we're in 2 hubs and we're 9 hours different for the majority of the day. So my day, I work and live on a European schedule to be able to connect with the majority of my team in Basel, which means my days start very, very early in the morning. I don't even want to tell you what time I'm getting out of bed to be able to connect with the team. And they're also, on the other side, staying late and, many times running over into dinner schedules and other things that has to happen. So I think for us, it's been a bit of adjusting how we work. And because you do want to maintain that level of connection, you can't keep everything via email. It has to be some kind of face-to-face. And so, how we work, and you make sure that the time that we have together is really precious time. So what are the most important work? What's the personal aspects? And to make sure you're balancing and blending that together has been important discussions for us. And also, delegating work in different ways, because the fact that we can work on a almost 24-hour schedule to say, don't stay late, give it to somebody else who can pick up the ball and carry it forward, has us, thinking differently in our new ways of working as well, that I think has taught us how to be, much more flexible, even outside of the agile methodologies and principles that I know all of us are working towards. The other aspect I would just bring, is, in the patients and healthcare professionals. So the team that I work with and support is supporting patient and patient groups and supporting healthcare professionals. And so, through this pandemic, first and foremost, in connecting to our healthcare professionals so that they have the information they need, because we all can appreciate there's lots of information in this area right now. So how do you make sure that healthcare professionals have the most current and up-to-date? And when these pandemics started and you saw the spread happening around the world, it really offered us the opportunity as a global team to share what was happening in one country with another. So if there were care and standards of practices that were being used in China, that we could share that with individuals across Europe, quickly so that they could be able to relate and ultimately do what's best. And for our patients in particular, for those in clinical trials and patients just needing care and support, immediately making decisions of how do we bring the care to them? How do we support them continuing on their therapy and alleviate some of the concerns? So just listening and being a part of patient communities and understanding what they're going through and asking yourself every day, what's the difference I can make? What can we do? And stretching, us in ways that we had never thought of. And I think will be incorporated into our new solutions and the new way past the pandemic, when we go forward, that we've recognized what we can do and how we can truly advance solutions when you're in a situation like that and everyone is focused on the same goal.
That's awesome. And what you just said really illuminates what we've been talking about at PharmaVOICE for the last 6 months, is that the industry now has this opportunity to be extraordinary. Why go back to what's next normal, but why not be the extraordinary normal? We have an opportunity to springboard up and to be better than what we had done before, and to capitalize on the opportunities that have been presented amongst all of this unrest. So I can't thank you enough. And before we close out though, I do, speaking of raising the bar and our theme, I'd love to ask each of you going around how you're raising the bar for yourself and for your company. Rebecca, I'll start with you.
So for my company, as a pharmacist by background, my goal is to really shift us from being, a traditional big pharmaceutical company to a healthcare solutions company. And I think this pandemic and being able to provide the types of solutions that we're working together to be able to provide, and not just us as a company, but across the industry, we really have a tremendous opportunity to shift our reputation and the impact that we can have for the world on a personal level, because there is a lot of diversity in the world around us and lots of things that we're all dealing with, and social unrest, particularly here in the US, that I'm really leaning into how I can be a better ally, a better coach and mentor, and a support network for those around me on my team and personally, that I can help and for all of us stay united and stay together and represent ourselves and be an ally where I can to make sure the views of others are heard.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing that. Guadalupe, I'll turn to you.
I think professionally, the way that I'm raising the bar, specifically Ultragenyx in general, is I want to make sure patients get access to medicines at reasonable prices and be able to provide them when they need it. I've been an advocate for really making sure we start manufacturing products that are much more cheaper, but also that can be distributed in a faster way to the patient in a faster way. So I think I've been trying to really advocate for the patients to make sure their voice is also incorporated into the solutions that we are creating, and really kind of having that voice incorporated into it. Now, personally, I think being able to help mentor others, and I think that's an important thing, to really mentor the next generation of individuals to come through the pipeline, to really come and come to diversity within the companies, but also in the industry. And I think if we create more diverse systems and more diverse individuals, in that way we can have a much more collaborative environment and much better off as an industry itself.
Excellent. Susanne, we'll turn to you now.
Yeah, so I think one thing, we've talked a lot about the COVID-19 now, and I think one thing that's been clear over the last 6 months is how the testing ecosystem have not been sufficient, have not offered, the efficiencies and access to testing. So where, Guadalupe, you are talking about access to medicines, we're kind of taking that a step further and say, there are so many patients that are not getting access to the right testing, so that they will by that get the right treatment, and that's the focus that we serve in my company. But right now we are on a journey to to launch the world's first diagnostic network, to really try and improve on that network and connect all of the different dots in the ecosystem to ensure that patients shouldn't wait months and months or years and years to get on the right treatment. And this situation we're in has really just pivoted that development and accelerated that. So being part of that journey is just really important for me right now, and then supporting the team in that and what that takes of change management and different way of working is my key focus at the moment.
Thank you so much. Adlai, take us home.
I will give it a good go. From an organizational perspective, EY's purpose is really about building a better working world. And I feel wildly lucky because EY has chosen to really invest on behalf of the industry. The opportunity to try to make cell and gene therapies as available to as many patients that could possibly benefit from them. And we realize, we understand, and we certainly can see the promise of all of these therapies, but we also understand that they're massively complex to really enroll the patient, manufacture those very specific products and get them back out again. And all my colleagues here are playing critical roles in all of that. I think UI has an opportunity, and the program that we're on, to really start to convene and really start to bring together all of the different stakeholders that are invested in the care of a patient, and through the exchange, an unprecedented exchange of information, allow everybody to work together that much better. So kind of how we're trying to raise the bar as an organization is really getting those therapies out to as many patients and their caregivers who can benefit from them by really bringing together the community through really a neutral third party, through the exchange and sharing of information, so that we could actually do that. And if we can do that, I think we will forever change the trajectory of how we take care of pretty serious conditions like cancer and other things. And at a personal level, the Guadalupe, I'm going to build on you if I can for just a minute. The whole idea of role model has been massively important to me, and also as an LGBTQ member, somebody that has been out and open since I was very, very young, and have lived my career completely in that way in all of these different places that I've lived. I think there's a really important need to be continuing to live as that role model for that type of community. There's, so much understanding and misunderstanding as we talked about the cultural diversity of the planet. And I think by being a role model and somebody that's really lived openly through all of that as an openly gay man, really has now serving others to really kind of step forward and really bring all of themselves to work, to their families, and really to life. So that's my mission in terms of raising the bar at a personal level as well.
Fantastic. And it goes back to the point we talked about earlier about authenticity. So I want to thank you all for being with us today and showing that we need to be human, we need to be humble, we need to be sensitive. We need to be collaborative, and most of all, we need to be open to transforming the lives for patients. So thank you so much, and I wish you all continued success in your global roles and for being such courageous leaders. And thank you for being part of our 2020 PharmaVOICE 100 celebration.
Thanks, Taren.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Yeah, really great. Thank you.
For more PharmaVOICE 100 content, visit www.pharmavoice100.com.